Okay, good day, Dragon Slayers. This is Dr. Tom Bittker, and I'm delighted to have with me today Christopher Elliott. Uh, if you'd like to support our program, make sure you've got a copy of our book, Dragon Slaying, to help you recover from trauma and become your better self. Christopher joins me today. Uh, Chris, you are also an author, and I would say you're in the compassion and self-awareness spectrum. And you've just completed writing a book called Love Letters. But I'd like to know your path. How did you get to where you are today?
That's a long journey. I grew up in the rural area of Wisconsin, working for a lot of farmers. Had a great time living in the summers, fishing and having just snowball fights in the winter. It was a wonderful childhood, except I grew up also with an alcoholic and abusive father, and that created some enemies inside of me. And I wanted to know what to do about that as I got older. And I wrote a book. Said, hey, I want to positively impact millions of people. Let's write a book and see if you can do it that way. The book was called Thought Shredder, and it lays out the process that worked for me. And it also laid out how these these demons come out. I have 5 children myself, wonderful children, but as they grew up, they would have episodes or incidents that would remind me of an exact time in my childhood that same thing happened. Like one time I'm in the backyard playing with my boy and I started tickling him and he started saying, no, daddy, because I was tickling him too much. And it brought up a significant memory of mine that I had buried someplace.
Uh,
So I had to use this process to get over that. And that led me to forgiveness. That led me to another book, a Christian version of that book, that led me to Love Letters. And Love Letters is all about gratitude.
how has that process transformed you, that discipline?
The thought shredder process, it's 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 an interesting path because as I talk to other people about the process, they'll say, well, I did it and it didn't work for me. And I said, well, how many times do you do it? Well, I just did it one time. You mean I got to do it multiple times? Like, yeah, you've got to do this probably the rest of your life. You're going to have episodes where things are going to pop out of your memory, out of your subconscious, and you're going to have to slay them. You're going to have to use Thought Shredder and get rid of them. So and I forget sometimes too. I'll go through periods of anxiety. Usually that means I got to go to Thought Shredder and work the process again. But often it means it's time to write somebody a letter of gratitude. And that letter of gratitude, in the moment I'm doing that, relieves all my anxiety.
So, what is the discipline of shredding negative thoughts?
It's a 4 step process that I still believe was just given to me by God. As a child, I would use it. When my father would tell me, I wish you were never born, I would use the 4 step process where I would recognize what was being said, rid it. I would write it down on a piece of paper, look at it intently, rip it up, and throw it away, and then replace it with a positive thought. I am worthy. I am good at whatever I'm doing. Replace that with a positive thought, and then the big part of it, the last R, is reinforce. You got to keep doing this over and over again. So recognize what it is. If you start feeling anxiety or queasiness in your stomach or something that's just off, think about that. Try to recognize what is happening, what happened in your childhood that caused this to happen to you now. Then rip it up and throw it away because it's not true. Replace it with what is really true, what's great about you, and then reinforce that. Do it again, do it again, do it again.
So, the 4 R's: recognize, write, rip it.
Recognize, rid, replace, reinforce.
I like it. Okay. Uh, and you apply that discipline beyond just issues of memories of your childhood, no doubt.
Correct, yes. Just simple goals. When I first started writing the book, it was off because I was just talking about my selfish self and how I wanted to meet goals. I wanted to have a certain car, a certain job, a certain house, a certain relationship, and I would use it towards that, and it would help. But it really helped most when I got deep into my subconscious and understood things that were holding me back, things that were emotional, that were tearing down the fabric of who I was.
So, you confronted your own negative self talk,
Correct.
which may well have been echoes or legacy from your own childhood.
Exactly.
You'll never amount to anything, so on.
How come you can't be more like your brother?
Got it. Whatever happened to your relationship with your dad?
Unfortunately, we never came to a peace with our relationship. He I was about 9 years old. My parents got divorced. He moved down to Arizona, lived there for the rest of his life, and ended up dying down there before I could ever forgive him or tell him what I was feeling. I never read him a letter. I never spoke to him much, and then he passed away. And as I wrote, he passed away before I wrote the book. So when I got through the book, I realized that part of this is I've got to write a letter to my father and I've got to forgive him. The biggest lesson a month before I published the book was all of a sudden it hit me. This isn't a book about other people. This is a book about me. I've got to let go of these feelings. I've got to forgive the person who I in my book called a monster. I've got to forgive him and understand that he did the best he could with what he knew, and his father was worse than him.
Are you aware that under the circumstances, given what you knew, that you did the best you could?
I never, I never thought of it that way. I'm probably too hard on myself.
Well, I would say that there's a level of awareness that you have now that your dad never had. He didn't have that capacity to self-reflect, which is tragic. But as a kid, you do the best you can with what you have. You become wiser now. Uh, but I think you're dealing with a legacy a lot about what your dad did and the monster that is alcohol released.
So that's part of the forgiveness too. Is yes, we all make that decision to pick up that drink. We make that decision to close our fist, but there's times and there's parts of you that are out of your control. Just like the anxiety that comes into me is out of my control at times because it's my subconscious that's doing this. I don't have an understanding of that. He didn't have an understanding of that. He had no other way, no one else telling him, teaching him. His father died when he was 8. So he didn't have anybody else as a mentor to tell him, this is the way you grow up. This is the way you develop. This is how you should act.
So, Chris, as you raise your own kids, how many kids do you have? 5. So you got a lot of practice.
Exactly.
Okay. As you raise your own kids, did your father's negative model inspire you at all? This is what I'm not going to be.
Yes, a lot of things about what I'm not going to be, but a lot of things that I said I'm not going to be came out anyway. I never abused my children. I never hurt them in any way, but I remember vividly standing over my son, and I became that monster. But fortunately, I never picked up a hand, but I could feel it inside me, and I thought I have got to get out of here. And I walked away from the situation, left the house for a while, and just took a walk because I could feel that monster coming out, and I didn't want that.
Well, as parents, I think we underestimate, particularly when we have little children, how powerful we may seem, even though the situation that we're confronting with our kids may, for us as parents, even seem overwhelming.
Yeah, I agree. It's uh, it's things you have to uncover. That once you see them, you've got to try to understand them. Is my best way of thinking about it.
So, as you carry the message to others, do you speak to others about this? Is this something you do as part of your work in the church or other volunteer organizations?
I haven't in quite a while with Thought Shredder. Thought Shredder came out in 2012. I did a couple of years of speeches. I actually brought it into a leadership development program. I was working with a gentleman who was developing and designing leadership development, and we were going around different parts of the country, mostly around the state of Wisconsin, with customers developing their leaders. And what we realized is anybody can learn how to be a leader and the activities and actions that it takes to become a leader, but you still got to have it inside you. And a lot of people have blockers inside of them that they can't become a leader. They can be, but they think they can't. So what we realized is Thought Shredder had to come in first and break down those barriers for people to learn and develop into a leader before we could put the practice of being a leader into them. Otherwise, they'd keep rejecting it.
Well, I think a lot of that comes from responsibility avoidance, which relates to shame avoidance, which relates to exposure avoidance. So, the leader has to risk transparency, uh, and we may feel vulnerable if we're leaving if we're leading without that assurance that people will accept us, love us, understand our best aspirations, and so on, in behalf of the group we're leading.
The vulnerability is I think, a big issue. People don't want to be vulnerable. They want to close in and make sure they're safe, and they believe that by avoiding things, they're keeping themselves safe. And in reality, other people want to see your vulnerabilities. They want to see that you're human. So the more that you show that, I believe, the better your relationships are going to be, and the better leader you're going to be.
Having led a few organizations, I would say that one of the more effective thought constructs I have is that, if anything, I am serving others rather than bossing others. That is, how can I help this group achieve the best that this group can achieve? How can I serve you on that behalf? What directions can we take?
And we also got together with Ken Blanchard and got developed some of the leadership around his program as well, the situational self leadership, and that was definitely a servant leadership style.
Good. So I think you and I come from the same framework as it relates to leadership. We serve with the endorsement of people that we do serve.
You only get that endorsement if you serve.
And sometimes we don't have receptive team members. And then we have to look at that from almost a four-dimensional perspective and see what's going on. I've used a lot of management by objectives when I work with people, even in therapy. What is it we wish to accomplish? What do we wish to risk in order to accomplish that end? What part are we both going to play? How are we going to measure it, and so on? And then we hold people, both of us, accountable to reviewing what's happened to the process a week or two down the road. Is this still working for us?
Yeah, I think the great part about that you just said is holding each other accountable. It's not just the leader holding the individual accountable. It's you're going to hold me accountable too. I've got to help you to develop and see these things the way I need you to see them, and show you the way, the process, the techniques to get to the objectives and what drives those objectives.
Which also means that to be an effective leader compels some level of transparency. I grew up and attended the University of Michigan, and I recall that in my junior year, John Kennedy came on a campaign tour, and like a lot of other students, I stood outside of the Michigan Union to hear John Kennedy give a speech. And he spoke for the first time about the Peace Corps. And I was so infected by that idea that ultimately, a few years later, I joined the Peace Corps as a physician. And it was transformative. But I very much admired Kennedy. I can recall, this is probably, I don't know if you were on this earth at this time, but when the Bay of Pigs invasion occurred, it was completely messed up. I mean, ultimately, he was given inadequate information from the CIA. It was inadequately prepared, and it was a disaster. And rather than blaming, Kennedy came forward and was very transparent and took responsibility for it. And I very much appreciated that in a leader. He wasn't pointing fingers. He said, I messed up on this. I'll do better next time. I wish we had that kind of political leadership these days.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot of blaming right now rather than taking ownership responsibility. Unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but President Kennedy passed away before I was born. But something struck me in grade school where I read a book about him. I think it was PT 109 and Red Badge of Courage. I think he also wrote, and I read that and just
No. Red Badge of Courage was written years before Kennedy.
It had to be PT 109 then, and I remember reading the book and thinking this guy is magnificent, and he became a hero of mine. And I just read everything I possibly could on him.
Well, I don't think we've had it the equal ever since. In fact, I said it when I was a 23-year-old medical student, and I was sitting in a farmhouse that we had rented and watching the memorial service for Kennedy, and remarked to my friends, "I don't think we'll ever find his equal," and we haven't. So he's an aspirational goal for leaders. Um, how are you spending your time now?
I do two things. I do project management. That's my livelihood. That's what pays all the bills for me. I've been doing that for 20 some years. It's a very easy thing to get back into to make sure you can pay the bills. But my passion,
Well, my friends refer to me as a project. You think you can help me out?
not sure I can manage that, but I give it a try. But my passion is around positively impacting millions. That's my mission statement, and writing books is the way I do that. I hope to do that, and writing books just builds inside of me just a joy that never comes out in any other efforts of mine. But just writing, talking to people, helping them through something, and showing gratitude to them is just an amazing feeling. Joy is the only thing I can use to describe it. It just feels joyful.
So, Chris, do you happen to have a copy of your books handy?
I do. I've got Thought Shredder here,
Uh huh. Good. I like that.
and then I've got two other books. I've got Love Letters is my most recent one, and that's a story of how I write letters to people who have impacted my life. That's an alternate cover. There's another cover to it as well. And then one book that I just wrote for fun. It's a journaling book, and it's called Makes You Wonder. It's 98 questions that make you think. And I got the idea because as my kids and I would drive to different places, I'd drive them to school or we'd go take trips, I would just throw out questions and we'd all look at the question and come up with a response to it. And I was amazed at the different ways that people looked at my kids at 10 and 12 years old, how they looked at things from a different perspective and had a completely different view of something that I did. And now the interesting thing is for my birthday, Father's Day, and Christmas every year, my five kids will pick out a separate question from there and write their answer to it. And that's a gift to me.
I like that.
This year was even more special. They actually took love letters and instead of writing me a letter, because love letters is about writing letters of gratitude to those people who have impacted you. Instead of writing that letter to me, they wrote a commitment to me saying, because of your book, Love Letters has inspired me, I'm going to write a love letter to this individual in my life because of what they've done to impact me. So all five of the kids are going to write their own love letter to somebody different.
I think it's a wonderful process. I regret. I had one mentor in particular that I presumed would not even remember me. But as I think about it now, he probably did, and I failed to write him that letter of gratitude before he died. I didn't know, obviously, he was getting older, but I should have presumed that I would give him the opportunity, if he wished, to say, "Who is this?" as opposed to writing the letter, and maybe there would be some recognition, and because he really did shape my life.
Yeah. And they don't, most people that I've talked to, that I've written the letters to, I don't want a response. I just want to write the letter because that's what I think God has taught me to do is just write it and go on to the next one without waiting for a response, you know. But a lot of the responses are, I had no idea that impacted you so much. And I try to give specific examples of what they did, when they did, and how that impacted me. And it's amazing. And the great thing about it is it's people just acting as themselves. They're not trying to get a letter. This isn't a competition. They're just being who they are. And in being who they are, they have authentically impacted me greatly.
Well, I've very much appreciated letters several years down the road from patients who I've treated. I mean, some marvelous transformations that allegedly our treatment together helped launch. So Yeah, that's very gratifying to receive that and learn of the positive things you've done.
Exactly. It's actually led into one other thing, where a couple of years ago on Father's Day, my kids gave me mini love letters, a mason jar full of post-it notes, and they all wrote something unique that I did that they loved about Dad. They called it 60 Things We Love About Dad. 5 kids and my wife all wrote 10 things. So every morning now, I go into that jar, I pick out one, I read it, and it's so simple. I'm thinking as a coming into being a new parent, like, oh my gosh, I got to do all these things for my kids, or they're going to come out spoiled or ruined. And it's the smallest little things. Thanks for filling up my car with gas. Thanks for walking with me to the park. Thanks for cleaning up the dishes. Thanks for cleaning out my thermos. Thanks for giving me a hug this morning. Just the little things you think, oh, that's nothing. It's the most meaningful thing to them.
Do you ever receive a letter of appreciation or an acknowledgement, and think to myself, boy, that really overestimates whatever I did, and then you find yourself growing into what the letter acknowledged. That is, Dad, you're just phenomenal, and you did such and such, and you're thinking, I don't know if I really did that, but I make sure that I'm going to measure up to that in the future.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a couple of them. One daughter wrote, I love the relationship you had with mom. It really teaches me what I should expect in a relationship with my husband. And I'm like, I work every day to think, what am I doing wrong in this marriage versus what am I doing right? And I'm like, well, actually am doing something right. And they're witnessing it, they're watching it. I'm not trying to do anything intentional. I'm just trying to be me, and they're watching it and learning from it.
So, are you part of any kind of religious affiliation at all?
I am a Christian, but I'm not affiliated with any. I am affiliated with a group called Pinnacle Forum. It's a national group, maybe an international group by now, that has small chapters all around the country. We happen to have 8 members in our group. We meet every other Thursday, and it's just 8 men, and we talk about our problems in faith, in jobs, in family, and in education. And we rate ourselves, and we talk each other through it. We support each other, we help each other. It's one of the rare places that I see these days where men get together, and when they end their session, they all say, I love you, which is an incredibly unique thing that I haven't experienced much in my life, where another man will tell me he loves me.
So, you formed a brotherhood.
Yes, definitely.
That's really very supportive and actually very creative. I think we need more of that because in this time, particularly a time where we are so dependent on media for stimulation and for interaction, we lose touch of those face to face encounters.
It's amazing the transformation it makes. And we are on a text group together too. I can say, hey, I've got this issue coming up. Can you all pray for me? And they will all send back prayers right away to me. They'll say them every night. It's just a great way to support other men. And there's women's groups also. So the women support women, men support men, because they just have some unique difficulties to deal with.
Okay, well, I will look forward to the opportunity of speaking with you again. You have been a very inspiring guest. Uh,
Well, thank you, Dr. Bittker.
you can call me Tom. That's all right.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it. I had a great time being on here, and thanks for the opportunity.
People only call me doctor when insurance covers the value of the encounter. All right, my friend. I do hope to speak to you again, and good fishing in Wisconsin. Be well.
Yep. Thank you very much, Tom.
Okay. Thank you.